Alright, we're back again for another video. Our last video saw us at the end of the Lake of Nur dungeon, which is a bonus side dungeon. We'd also cleared the Old Forest. So now we're going to move on to the rest of the Tier 2 dungeons, starting with the Maze. Now, an interesting thing about this area is you can actually get out to the world map from these little teleportation circles. And then once you've exited this dungeon that way, you can get back to that room. And it's one of the only rooms in the game that isn't affected by the sweep. So if you find something and you want to just keep it around, but you don't have inventory space for it, you can bring it back and you can drop it on the floor in there. Now, this is the maze. It's southwest of the town of Dearth. And this one is kind of unusual because it's only 2 floors, and one of them is very small because it's a boss floor. The maze is a single floor dungeon, and as the name implies, it's a maze. It used to be a lot narrower. The passages used to be 1 tile wide, but it was too hard to navigate, and it caused the auto-explore to really lag out, so darkgod widened the passages. It also used to be a 5-floor dungeon, but over time it was reduced in size because a lot of players found it was very tedious to go through. The maze is filled with a wide variety of enemies. Mostly minotaurs and rogues are the primary enemies you'll find in here. You can also run into dragons. It's kind of a grab bag of what you're going to run into in here. Minotaurs and their upgraded form, the Molitar, can confuse at range, which makes them a little bit dangerous. But at this point, your saves should be high enough just from pieces of gear you found laying around that it shouldn't be a major threat. And we just leveled up, and there is an Anorithil vampire here. Anorithils are kind of like Sun Paladins, but they're pure casters, and they do light and darkness damage. They get unlocked as a character class later on in the game, and they're a lot of fun to play. Now, this particular one has 2 auras, Chant of Fortress and Hymn of Shadows. Chant of Fortress reduces the physical damage they take. I'm not sure offhand what Hymn of Shadows does. I think it ups their darkness damage. Both of these actually do damage reflect as well, so if I hit him, I will take a little bit of damage. His last ability that he has active here is Corona, and... wait, he has Blurred Mortality. Does that mean he's a Necromancer? I think that's because he's a vampire. In Corona, the last ability makes it so he does extra spell attacks if he gets a spell crit. We're going to want to kill him as quickly as possible. I'm going to use our blindness infusion to get everything sort of scattered. We're taking a lot of damage here. I'm going to summon that tentacle I found earlier because I really don't want to have to deal with these. And look, there's another rare enemy down here. Total thuggery. Summoning destabilization. Is he a summoner? I don't know what this is. Looks like he's an archer. Oh, I see. It's because he's summoning rogues. That's why he has that debuff. He's an archer. But that particular type of enemy will always summon rogues, the bandit lords. Okay, we killed him. And now let's take care of this Anorithil before he can do any more damage to us. Okay, now we have a glowing chest here, and as I touched on earlier, these can have any number of things in them. It might have just a standard blue or purple ego item, it might have an artifact in it. It can either be guarded or unguarded. Okay, Insidious Poison Infusion, not very useful to us, and it's guarded with a rare Cursed. Another rare enemy, Breath Control and Striking Stance. Looks like he's a brawler. Our belt is pretty bad, so we're going to go ahead and use this just for that lightning resistance. Seems we've walked around the corner into something shooting us with a bow and poison, and we're blind. Gelatinous cubes are an interesting enemy. They don't do a lot of damage. They can breed like some other slime enemies, but they don't do this at the same rate. And usually when you kill the master slime, they'll drop a bunch of different items. Usually a few piles of gold and a bunch of mundane items. One nice thing about doing this dungeon is because there's so many rogues here, if you're playing a character that uses daggers, or if you're playing a character who's rogue, like a Marauder or a Shadow Blade, or even an Arcane Blade or a Temporal Warden, you can find a lot of very nice items in here. Humanoid characters just seem to drop artifacts more often, and rogue characters will frequently drop artifacts that are usable by rogues because of the type of armor and weapons they're naturally designed to equip. So, if you're looking for daggers, you can usually leave this place with a nice artifact dagger or a nice artifact light armor. I found all kinds of great stuff in here when I was playing rogue characters. This chest wasn't guarded, but it had a blue ring in it. I'm not sure what those stats are offhand. This would be pretty nice if we didn't already have two really, really nice rings. We're almost finished. We're really just filling in the last few patches at this point. Oh, what could be down here? Just looks like some Venom Drake hatchlings. And an actual Venom Drake. Just occurred to me, the graphic between these two is not supremely different. That could probably do with a change. Now, the difference between a Venom Drake and a Venom Drake hatchling is the Venom Drake hatchlings are only really good in melee, whereas the full-fledged Venom Drakes have a breath weapon that does a lot of damage. So we kind of want to avoid getting hit by that, but in this particular position, we can't really get anywhere safe where we can avoid it, so we're really just going to want to burn through this group as quickly as possible. Because we're taking a lot of melee damage, I'm going to turn on my shield wall ability to reduce that a bit. And then we'll turn that back off for now, because that 20% physical damage penalty is pretty bad when we're just dealing with fodder enemies. Nothing really good in that chest. Alright, looks like we're done with this floor. We're gonna wear these boots. I like light radius on boots. It's kind of a weird mod, and you'll only ever find that on these rare boots, not on artifacts usually, or regular ego items. Okay, this is the boss of the labyrinth, the Minotaur of the labyrinth. He is a fearsome, bull-headed monster, and he hits pretty hard. He has a stun attack, and he has a confusion attack. He's relatively easy because he doesn't do a whole lot of things that are special. I forgot to put that back on, and let's put on the shield wall just to make sure we don't get stunned or knocked back. As you can see, we just got confused. That's why the screen went blurry. When you're confused, half of the time you will fail to take an action. And brain locked renders a random talent unavailable. No talents will cool down until the effect is worn off. So this is kind of like a stun, but it's very short duration. Almost finished here. As I said, he's not terribly threatening for us, mostly because we're really strong physical characters. If we were playing a character that was kind of weak in melee, we might have had a lot more trouble with that fight. And the item we got from it is a dagger called the Spellblaze Shard, which is really amazing for a rogue, especially at this level with how much elemental damage is on it. But again, it's not going to be useful to us. We also found a shielding rune, the first one we found in the game. It creates a damage shield for 4 turns when you use it, absorbs damage. They're not really going to be useful for this character, at least not one that heals this little and is scaling off of magic. But if I was playing a mage or something like that, it would be a very useful item. And this one's another regeneration infusion, but again, it scales off magic. I'm probably going to use it anyway, just so I have the extra one. So I'm going to buy that with 1 talent category point. And I'm just going to move this down here. Let's see what I can swap out. There. Never going to use that ability, so I'm just going to take that off my bar. Okay, and there's usually between 1 and 3 chests on the 2nd floor of the maze. And sometimes I'll have good items, and sometimes I'll have garbage, but... Now, this would be a pretty good ring if I was playing a willpower-based character. As I said, rares sometimes can spawn with good items, or with good modifiers like this, and then sometimes they can be complete crap. It really depends on how lucky you are. Wow, there was a lot of bodyguards for that one. Looks like we've leveled up a few times. Now, normally you're going to want to spend your points as soon as you get a level up. I've just sort of fallen into the habit of waiting. And there's no advantage to that, so please don't do that. Don't pick up my bad habits. Now that we have shield expertise locked, or maxed out, we have other abilities that we can now start putting points into, now that we've taken care of our major priorities. Last Stand, brace yourself. Yeah, it makes you unable to move, but boosts your defensive stats. I've never really found this very useful. I've heard some people swear by it, but at this point we're not going to put any points into it. Maybe later when we have some extra points. Repulsion will knock back nearby enemies, not really advantageous for us since we're not a super mobile class. And Overpower and Assault both don't gain much scaling from here. Riposte and Shield Pummel, it's the same case. They don't gain much scaling and they don't get any extra effects. So we're going to start leveling some other talents. Combat Techniques has a few interesting talents. We can start putting points into Rush, which will drastically reduce the cooldown and increase the range. We're going to want to max this out eventually anyway, so this is what I'm going to max next. I'm going to get this up to 5 points. When it's up to 5 points, we'll be able to reduce the cooldown for Rush substantially, and if you get other items that can reduce the cooldown as well, you can eventually get Rush to the point where it has a 1-turn cooldown, and you can just rush from enemy to enemy. It's pretty nice. We also have generic points available, and it looks like we had our Power as Money talent open, which gives us a save bonus based on how much gold we're carrying because we're dwarves. So we're going to max that out for the level now. And now our saves are extremely high, which is very nice to have. Alright, now we're done with this floor. As I said, it was much smaller than the previous floor. It's just a boss floor. The layout does change every time you do it, and there will be a varying number of chests, but for the most part it's always going to be the same, to the point of, you know, being a small room and having the same enemy in it. Now that we've done one complete dungeon and we've turned in all the items and transmogrified them, the Share Tool Fortress has enough power that we can improve our Rod of Recall. We're not going to do that right now, but we will go up there later, and once you've done that, it'll teleport you back to the fortress instead of putting you out on the world map. This is in case you want to drop any items off or anything like that. There's no real major reason that you have to upgrade the Rod of Recall, but it is kind of convenient. It's especially convenient later on when you'll eventually lose access to this if you don't do that, at least temporarily. This next dungeon is west of the maze in a little beach area. It's the Sandworm Tunnels. And this is probably the most unique dungeon in the game, and it's also the one where you're most likely to have a really stupid death. You see, you have to follow sandworms through the tunnels, and they will dig holes in passageways. If you wait too long in a tunnel, it will collapse around you and you will suffocate and die. In the past, the best way to do this dungeon was to rush to the last room, or to the downstairs on each floor, and be as careful as possible and clear as little as possible so you took the fewest risks of death. But with version 43 and the change to the way item drops are, now based off of chests, this place has the highest rate of chest spawn rates in the game. There's usually about 4 to 5 chests on every floor. So if you skip the floors, you miss out on a lot of really great loot. So it's recommended you do this, but be incredibly careful and don't take excess risk. I unfortunately make the mistake of taking really dumb gambles pretty often. If you shoot down a tunnel that a worm just came out of, it's very likely that the tunnel's going to collapse by the time you get to the end, and you won't be able to outrun the collapsing tunnel behind you unless you have some kind of a speed boost. It's generally recommended that if you found a movement infusion at this point as a melee character, or if you're playing a caster, you'll want to have a teleport rune, and use those to get out of hairy situations if you can. Shield Wall, Elemental Harmony. I don't remember what class gets Elemental Harmony. He's a summoner. Yeah. When summoners summon enemies, the ones you're going to want to usually kill are the Rich Flame Splitters and Hydras. These War Dogs, because they scale out of control very quickly. Yeah, you see how much damage that just did just from getting clipped by it for a second. 200 to 80 damage. If you get hit by maybe 2 or 3 collapsing tunnels, you'll probably die. And if you get stuck in a tunnel and you don't have some means of undeath, you'll die usually within 3 rounds of suffocation. As soon as you run out of air, you're dead. You don't take damage, you just croak. A nice perk is, if you haven't found any good runes or any good infusions, the enemies in here have a very high chance to drop them, so you might be able to leave this place with some pretty decent items for those slots. Okay, we have a unique who is a bulwark with, it looks like, cursed abilities. Wow. The sword and shield cursed abilities, no less. He's probably not going to be too hard for us. Yeah, he's going to be cake. And the rare item we get for killing him is absolutely no use to us because it's a staff, but let's take a look at it real quick. That could be a heck of a nice staff if I was actually playing a caster, unfortunately. There is a lot of waiting in Sandworm Tunnels. Unfortunately, you can't really venture out down branches on your own unless you have some means of moving incredibly quickly. So you have to sometimes wait for the sandworms to come up to you, and they often clump together like this. And of course, because you have no control over what direction the sandworms go, you'll often loop into redundant areas trying to get to the one place you need to go that you haven't been yet. Okay. Now it's about time we got off this floor because I think we've cleared everything off of it now. I'd forgotten entirely that I had this Earth Size ability, and that's really handy down here, so I wish I'd remembered. Okay, we have a solipsist blue ooze, and some kind of sandworm whose abilities haven't been identified yet. Let's kill this solipsist blue ooze, like, in one shot if we... Ooh. Looks like we could not kill it in one shot. Wow, how does it have so many hit points? I don't know anything about solipsists. Now, that situation back there could have gotten very bad if I hadn't quickly burned down the enemy who's standing next to me. Because if you get trapped between two enemies in a collapsing tunnel, the tunnel will collapse around you, and you'll die. If that happens, you've got to find a way to get out of the situation quick. We just found something nice back there. Wild infusions are an item that will cure you of certain debuffs, and it classifies what those debuffs are on the infusion. In this case, this is a wild infusion that will cure me of two different effects, magical and mental effects. Physical effects aren't so much of an issue now because my physical saves are so high, so I'm going to use this and I'm going to replace my current rune, or my current infusion, which just clears physical effects, with this instead. That way, if I get confused or get hit by a spell effect, I can use this to clear it off instead. Looks like there's only this room left that I haven't been in. Actually, there might be one on the top left, now that I look at the map. Wow, I wish this could get more interesting. Alright, this will be the last floor of the Sandworm lair. And the boss is directly outside the front. The Sandworm Queen is a very easy boss, but she summons a lot of additional enemies. She'll summon sandworms that are actually quite a bit more difficult than she is, so we want to kill her before we get overwhelmed. Did not mean to drop my shield wall, but it's okay, because I don't remember her stunning at any point. We found another unique, or another random artifact staff. It's not going to be any good for us. And we found this, the Heart of the Sandworm Queen. The Heart of the Sandworm Queen, ripped from her dead body. You could consume it should you feel mad enough. Yes, the Heart of the Sandworm Queen is a consumable item. You're intended to eat it. When you do, you gain the you effectively gain a free level. You additionally get access to this talent tree down here, which is called Wild Gift Harmony, which has a few different nice abilities in it. I don't know if we're going to have the points to spend on those, so we're just going to leave it unaccessible for now. We're going to finish maxing out Rush. Put another point to Thick Skin. And fill out our Constitution score some more. Another rogue dagger. Okay, that sun infusion has done us well so far, but we're going to replace it now with a movement infusion instead. This will give us some added mobility. Now, the sun infusion, or the movement infusion, in this particular case, will make us 600% faster for one game turn. What that means is that in the span of one game turn, we'll be able to move an extra 6 squares. That's really nice for this place in particular, because if I get caught in a collapsing tunnel, it'll allow me time to turn around. I think that should just about do the level. Alright, I'm going to recall out, and with our next video, we're going to go on to the last of the Tier 2 dungeons, Daikara, and we're probably also going to find out what's going on in Dearth that has kept us from being able to access the town. Thank you, and tune into my next video.